Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show. What a week we have had in the city of Pittsburgh. So much to think about, reflect on, and with everything swirling around us, the one thing that people have been talking about is getting out to vote. Election day is on Tuesday. Here to talk about what's on the ballot, our own Wallace Bright. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, so a lot comes down to voter turnout. Whatever side of this fence, and that fence is now getting higher in terms of the divide, but it comes down to voter turnout.
Yeah, and you know, traditionally Democrats have had a hard time getting their base out for midterm elections for whatever reason that might be. But you know, this year there are various pollsters and various other predictors that are saying that that base is ginned up, that it's more motivated this time around, and that it's, you know, really prepared to turn out. Some have said, as of about a week ago, that probably 10 or 12% in those areas where you'd have early voting, 10 or 12% of the Democratic base has already turned out to vote. So, you know, for them, you know, hopefully that turns out to be the case, because that's what they're going to need.
That's what they're going to need.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some important races in this area.
Well,
I'm going to let you start wherever you want.
Of course, we have the governor's race. I mean, you know, number one, we have Scott Wagner, who is, you know, challenging Governor Wolf for the office of governor here in Pennsylvania. Two candidates that have, you know, they have not differed a whole lot on certain areas. And I think that, you know, we know that one of the most important areas of concern within the state is always going to be education. And, you know, both of these candidates are looking to bring more money into education if they can. I think that a lot of economists have said that, you know, former Senator Wagner's plan will not work that well in actually doing it. So, you know, a lot of it depends now on the fact that, you know, in terms of actually putting the rubber to the road, Governor Wolf has done it once. So it's, you know, that's something for people to look at in terms of the two candidates that are running for governor.
Now, right now, as far as I know, I'll be honest, I didn't check before we actually began to tape this show. The governor is significantly ahead in the polls.
You're talking about around 17, 18 points almost that you're looking at. And actually in one poll, it's over 20 points. It's like 52 to 30. So yeah, significantly there. Now let's keep in mind, we all know what happened 2 years ago.
I was going to say, yeah, we all know what those polls mean.
We know what happened 2 years ago, and you know, a lot of those polls were way off. You know, you have a number of people these days that won't actually be polled. You have various regulations with regard to cell phones, and there are so many Americans today that are cell phone only. They don't even have landlines. So sometimes, you know, let's say the technology of polling has to change to keep up with the times.
Well, the other thing I heard, and then I'll move on, is that a lot of people just don't tell the truth.
Right.
They don't admit what they did, be it good, bad, or ugly. They don't admit it.
Next race of importance is, of course, the Senate race, United States Senate race, where we have, you know, two candidates, both who have been in the Washington circle. We have the incumbent, well, we have Congressman Lou Barletta.
I was going to say, yeah, they're both incumbents, just not necessarily in the same position.
We have Congressman Lou Barletta from the Hazleton area, running on the Republican ticket. And we also have Bob Casey, the incumbent senator, running on the Democratic ticket. Here you have the opposite of the governor's race. You have two men that distinctly believe and see the world in different circumstances. You have Casey, who at one time was kind of middle of the road, let's say, on the Second Amendment issue. Now, in the last few years, because of gun violence in some of the schools, he's turned more toward you know, we've got to strengthen the situation of who has guns. You have also Lou Barletta, who is one of the earliest supporters of Donald Trump. You know, when others did not support Trump, Lou Barletta did. And of course, you have Casey, who is a strong opponent of Donald Trump. So, you know, have two candidates there. They're on totally opposite ends of the poll in various circumstances. So that's going to be a race that has interesting personalities. But again, as you're coming down toward Election Day, and we're this close away, 48, 72 hours away from Election Day, Bob Casey has a significant kind of lead. And, you know, that part of that is incumbency.
Okay.
You know, the power of incumbency, the power to raise money, also the power that, you know, in 2 elections previously, he's not really been challenged early on in the primaries.
Right.
You know, so those funds build up.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to talk about the other race, the newly created 17th district. And I want to talk about as well whether or not some of the voters who are going to the polls on Tuesday are really voting, making referendum votes than anything else.
Okay.
We'll talk about all that next when the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show continues. Don't go away.